Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. On June 18th, there was a new post from Elder Andersen. It had to do with, at the time, Elder Spencer W. Kimball, who dedicated Ecuador for missionary work 60 years ago. And he said something really interesting in here that touches on Book of Mormon geography. And so I figured, okay, now's the time to do it. I've been talking about doing it for a little while now, putting together a spreadsheet for Book of Mormon geography. Up until this point, I've been very uninterested in the topic. I still kind of am, but I feel like putting together this spreadsheet is just a natural extension of the work that I'm already doing. I'm trying to learn everything that I can about the church, and I've been putting it off for too long. I don't really feel too strongly one way or the other. From my understanding, there's two camps when it comes to Book of Mormon geography. There's the Mesoamerican model that believes that most of the Book of Mormon took place in like Central and South America. And then the other model is the Heartland model that believes that most of the Book of Mormon took place in the continental United States, I guess primarily in the Heartland. I haven't gotten that far into it. What I want to do with this is I want to collect quotes. So I'm not going to be looking at archaeology. I'm not going to be looking or like trying to make calculations based on things said in the Book of Mormon, like distances and stuff like that. At least not for right now. Right now, all I want to do is collect quotes. Okay. If Joseph Smith said that something took place in a particular spot, I'm going to believe him. If any prophet or apostle says that, I'm going to believe them. For me, that holds more weight than any archaeology or reasoning that's out there. And I do trust science, I trust archaeology, but I also know that it's imperfect and it's not complete. No one has declared archaeology complete unless somebody has a time machine and can take me back to the time of the Book of Mormon. Right now, all they're really doing is just putting together the puzzle the best that they can. So I'm very open-minded, and for me, the more real thing comes from prophets and apostles. So I went ahead and I transcribed what was said in this video. And this is the first thing that I put on this spreadsheet. This spreadsheet is called Quotes, Book of Mormon Geography. All right, he says, 60 years ago, with President Kimball, an extraordinary missionary, began work here in this special country. Ecuador is a very, very beautiful place. It is the most beautiful. We're thankful for this prayer. Quote, Our Heavenly Father, we present unto thee on this remarkable occasion, having taken the first steps toward establishing the gospel in this chosen land, which has been inhabited for many centuries by your people, the children of Lehi. End quote. And finally, now in the church, we have a temple here. We have many stakes, and the members are very special. So I guess this is up to interpretation when he says many centuries, but I tend to think the context in which President Kimball said this is that the children of Lehi at the time of the Book of Mormon were in Ecuador. Now, before you get all upset, don't type anything yet. Don't type anything, because I have quotes on here that support both ideas. And at the moment, I don't know how to make them mesh. I don't really see the problem behind just both North and South America being the location of the Book of Mormon with all of its cities. I know that there's the whole thing about the narrow neck of land and whatever. My thing about that is we read in 3rd Nephi that there were great changes that took place to the land. Cities were sunk in the ocean and mountains were cast up and things like that. So I don't even know, with all those changes that took place, I don't know how possible it is to figure out, based on measuring things, where the Book of Mormon took place. But I'm new to this. Please just, okay, let's just move on. What's the next thing? Okay, the next one, and all these quotes are quotes that I already had, by the way. So the one from Elder Andersen is new. These other ones I already came across while I was doing some other video. This is one that I came across for my spreadsheet called Quotes, Visions, and Visitations. And it has to do with the dedication of the Mexico City, Mexico temple. Okay. Oh yeah, here's the rundown of the columns. So the ones to pay attention to, let's go back. So in column G, I have a column for if the speaker is talking about Nephites or Lamanites, or in this case with Ecuador, just simply the children of Lehi. And then I have the location in column H. So with this one, with the dedication of the Mexico City, Mexico temple, again, it doesn't specify Nephites or Lamanites, it's just the descendants of Lehi. But let's go ahead and read this. So this is President Gordon B. Hinckley, at the time second counselor in the first presidency. This is a Church News article from June 22nd, 2018 by Jerry Avant. The most memorable part of the Mexico City temple dedication was these words from President Hinckley. Okay, so here we go. I'm sure everyone has had an experience that becomes embedded in his or her memory. Maybe it came through some action or something that was said. One of my memories comes from the dedication of the Mexico City, Mexico Temple, December 2nd through 3rd, 1983. President Gordon B. Hinckley, then second counselor in the first presidency, conducted and addressed some of the sessions to dedicate the temple, which was the first in Mexico and the 26th worldwide. As he began his address in one of the sessions, President Hinckley spoke with a quivering voice as he testified that souls from the other side of the veil were present. All rooms of the temple are filled with faithful Latter-day Saints, but I am convinced there is a larger, unseen congregation participating with us, end quote. President Hinckley then named specifically individuals who had key roles in establishing the church in Mexico, beginning with Brigham Young, who sent missionaries to the country. He stated the names of several of the missionaries and the first mission president. He named the first Mexican who was baptized and pronounced the names of several others who had occupied a place in the history of the church in Mexico. President Hinckley then proceeded to give the talk he had prepared. I suppose most of us have been in congregations where the person conducting the meeting has acknowledged certain people, such as a member of the stake presidency or other visitor, and later has said something to the effect, "There's another person I failed to introduce." Something like that happened during the dedication of the temple in Mexico City. President Hinckley had been speaking several minutes. He paused and explained that there was another person from the other side of the veil he had not mentioned. In a strong voice filled with emotion and joy, President Hinckley exclaimed, "Welcome, Father Lehi. Oh how your heart must rejoice." I was seated on one of the front rows in the celestial room. I wanted to turn around and look in the direction where a late comer might have entered the room. The moment seemed so real that I felt surely I could see what Father Lehi looked like. I didn't see the Great Book of Mormon prophet. I can't affirm that President Hinckley saw him with physical eyes, but I've no doubt that the Spirit let President Hinckley know that Father Lehi indeed was present that day in that temple. President Hinckley spoke of other temples as a fulfillment of prophecy regarding Lehi's descendants. Now here's a key part. Quote, 6 new temples have been dedicated this year. I went ahead and looked it up, and in blue, right here in the brackets, these are the temples. Atlanta, Georgia Temple, Apaya, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, Apaya Samoa Temple, Nuku Alofa Tonga Temple, Santiago, Chile Temple, Papeete Tahiti Temple, Mexico City, Mexico Temple. Okay, so those are the 6 temples. Okay, look what he says next. These were unplanned in terms of particular prophecy, but most of these temples have been built to serve descendants of Lehi. I believe the Lord has touched his prophet, then President Spencer W. Kimball, to bring into play those processes by which he is remembering ancient covenants concerning the descendants of Lehi. Now, really quick, I know that after the time of the Book of Mormon, people can migrate. So some of you might be like, well, he's just talking about those that migrated from the Heartland. This isn't in support of Mesoamerica. I'm not so sure about that. I don't feel like that's the spirit of what's being said here, frankly. I could be wrong. I don't know. But I feel like this is something that it would be obvious to the congregation and obvious to anybody reading. It's like, oh yeah, these are Book of Mormon places. Chile in South America, Mexico City, Mexico temple. You might be asking, well, what about Samoa, Tonga, and Tahiti? I'm not going to make this the point of this video, but I've done videos about this before. On my quotes A through Z spreadsheet on what's currently row 440 for Polynesians, I have all these quotes right here that talk about the fact that the Polynesians are descended from essentially Hagoth, who was a Nephite. Hagoth, who built the ship and sailed north, and nobody knew where they went after that. Well, it turns out, according to these statements, and I have to get all these updated to the correct format, but according to all these different statements, whether it's Hawaii, New Zealand, Tonga, Samoa, or just Polynesians in general, which would include Tahiti, I suppose, are descendants of Lehi through Nephi, and then later through Hagoth. So, again, we have the Samoa and Tonga temple in that year, Chile, Tahiti, and Mexico. So yeah, that definitely would service the descendants of Lehi, especially if they've remained in those places since the time of the Book of Mormon. But okay, anyway, in one session, President Hinckley said he had watched the choir director. Quote, "I'm confident from her appearance there is in her veins the blood of Father Lehi and Mother Sariah. I've seen shining in her eyes the light of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I see it in your eyes. What hopeful people you are, people of capacity, faith, and devotion," he told the congregation. I'm going to skip to this last paragraph. "With few exceptions, mainly returned missionaries and former mission presidents and their families, I knew they were children of Lehi. All had come with that ancient prophet to a sacred place for a holy occasion. I was privileged to be there with them." Okay. So take that for what you will, but I feel like that could be somewhat of a prophetic statement on the geography of Lehi's children having a presence in Mexico. I see no problem with that. Okay, now, for those of you who are stewing about anything Mesoamerica, I have quotes that would more support the Heartland. Again, I don't see why it can't be the entirety of North and South America. So for me, it's no problem. But okay, so we have this one. This is one of my favorites. This is in the diary of President David O. McKay. You can find this on the University of Virginia's website for Mormon studies. They have diary excerpts, and there's one section for Missouri. I'm not going to read this whole thing. We just need to look at this first paragraph. So in his diary, it wasn't all strictly written by him. There's things written by others like President Alvin R. Dyer that are also in the diary. And I think this was probably written by him, by President Dyer. Any misspellings or anything is just exactly how it is on the website. So there's a missing hyphen here. It's not a typo. That's just how it is. Okay, so we're talking about Adam Onday Amen, which is here where I live in Missouri, about an hour and 20 minutes away from where I live in Independence. Okay, leaving Gallatin, which is really close to Adam Onday Amen, by the way. Leaving Gallatin, we traveled north on Highway 13 to the highway marker pointing to the direction of Adam Onday Amen. And sorry, I'm just going to, okay, so they're going to Adam Onday Amen. Let me just skip down here. So this is President McKay and others visiting the sites in Missouri. Okay. Passing Dustman's Diamond Farms, we crossed over a creek bed bridge and ascended the hill on a narrow road to Tower Hill. The party stopped here, and President McKay, President Smith, referring to Joseph Fielding Smith, and the rest of us got out of the cars and stood close to the spot of the ruins of the old Nephite and Adamic altar of prayer. Okay. We're going to read. This actually comes from Joseph Smith. He was the first one to identify this spot as the site of a Nephite altar. And then before that, Adam's altar. Okay. So if you go to Adam Onday Amen, take special note of that. They have a marker there of what I think is approximately the location where the altar would have been. and they have pictures, or they have a picture of the original stones that were found. I believe it's a site that's been repurposed. I believe first it was Adam's altar. Later on, the Nephites used it as an altar. And then later on, I believe that it was used as a burial mound. That's the clearest picture that I have right now of things. But anyway, so if you have a Nephite altar on Tower Hill, which overlooks the valley of Adamondiaman, then Nephites must have been there. And it doesn't say like Moroni's altar, because you could make the argument, well, it's because Moroni, he stopped by there, he built an altar. It's not how it's identified. It's identified as a Nephite altar. So that we don't know much more than that. Did the Nephites have a city there? They could have. I wouldn't be surprised. Was it some group that was just like passing by? I don't know. We don't have any details, but Joseph Smith, and then afterwards recognized by President David O. McKay and President Joseph Fielding Smith and others, it's been identified as a Nephite altar. So, all right, so we have that. Let's move on to the next one. Here it is. Okay, from here, I would like to go to some of these primary sources. This one I'd covered before in a previous video. This takes place in Utah, San Juan, or Blanding, the city of Blanding in San Juan County, Utah. And this is a really interesting story. It's been published in a bunch of different places, mostly blogs and comment sections and stuff. So I had to dig and find something close to the original, like the primary source. I don't know if this is it, but I downloaded it. This looks like an old document, but you can find this in lots of different places. Okay, this is about someone who, as far as I know, was just a member of the church, not a general authority. So maybe take it with a grain of salt. I haven't seen any general authorities validate this story, but I'm just going to take note of it. Okay, this could be myth, it could be embellished, it could be misremembered, all those things. Who knows? But I'm still going to take note of it. Experiences of Zeke Johnson. His full name is Ezekiel Johnson. Now 85, 1954. I've been requested to relate an experience I had in 1908 or 1909 in San Juan County. I was just making a home in Blanding, and the whole county there was covered with trees and sagebrush. I was working hard to clear the ground to plant a few acres of corn. We had 5 acres cleared and started to plant the corn. My little boy, Roy, 7 or 8 years old, was there to help me plant the corn. I'd plow around the piece, and then he would plant the furrow with corn. Then I'd cover it and plow again. While I was plowing on that piece of ground, I discovered there were ancient houses there. That is, the remnants of them. Okay, so houses, the remnants of houses. As I was plowing around, I noticed that my plow had turned out the skeleton of a small child. The skull and the backbone, most of the bones, of course, were decayed and gone. Part of the skeleton was there, so I stopped immediately as my plow had passed it a little. I turned and looked back against the bar of the plow between the handles. As I was looking at the little skeleton that I had plowed out and wondering, all of a sudden, to my surprise, I saw the bones begin to wiggle, and they began to change position and to take on different colors. And within a minute, there lay a beautiful little skeleton. It was a perfect little skeleton. When I saw the inner parts of the natural body coming in, the entrails, etc., I saw the flesh coming on, I saw the skin come on the body when the inner parts of the body was complete. A beautiful head of hair adorned the top of the head, and in about a half a minute after the hair was on the head, it had a beautiful crystal decoration in the hair. It was combed beautifully and parted on one side. In about a half a minute after the hair was on the head, the child raised upon her feet. She was lying a little on her left side with her back toward me. Because of this, I wasn't able to discern the sex of the child right away, But as she raised up, a beautiful robe came down over her left shoulder, and I saw it must be a girl. She looked at me, and I looked at her for a quarter of a minute. We just looked at each other, smiling. Then my ambition to get hold of her overcame me. I said, "Oh, you beautiful child." And I reached out as if I would embrace her, and she disappeared. That was all I saw, and I stood there and I wondered, and I thought for a few minutes. My little boy was wondering why I was standing there because he was he was down at the other end of the row, anxious to come and plant corn. Now I couldn't tell that story to anyone because it was so mysterious to me and such. Why should I have a miraculous experience? Sorry. Why should I have such a miraculous experience? I couldn't feature okay. I couldn't feature a human being in such a condition as to accidentally plow that little body out and see it come alive. A body of a child about 5 to 7 years old, I'd say. I couldn't tell the story to anyone until finally one day I met a dear friend of mine, stake patriarch Wayne H. Red of Blanding. He stopped me on the street and said, "Zeke, you have had an experience on this mesa you won't tell. I want you to tell it to me." Well, I told it to him. Then he had me tell it to other friends, and since then I have told it in 4 temples in the United States, in meeting houses, in many socials, fast meetings, and at conference time. I wondered, and it worried me for years as to why I was allowed to see it. A common man like me, uneducated. Why was I, just a common man, allowed to see such a marvelous manifestation of God's power? One day, as I was walking alone with my hoe on my shoulder going to hoe some corn, something said, "Stop under the shade of that tree for a few minutes and rest." This just came to me and I thought I would, so I stopped there and this was given to me. It was in answer to my prayer. I prayed incessantly for an answer as to why I was privileged to see that resurrection. I was told why. When the child was buried there, it was either in time of war with the different tribes of Indians, or it was winter time when the ground was frozen and they had no tools to dig deep graves. If if it were during time of war, they couldn't possibly take time to dig a deep grave. They just planted that little body as deep as they could under the circumstances. Then it was done. When it was done, the sorrowing mother knew that it was such a little shallow grave that in her sorrow she cried out to the little group that was present, that little quote, "That little shallow grave, the first beast that comes along will smell her body and will dig her up and scatter her to the 4 winds. Her bones will be scattered all over the flats." There just happened to be a man present holding the priesthood, a Nephite or a Jaredite. So here we go. So according to this story, and according to the answer to his prayer, it wasn't just like Native Americans or anything like that. It went all the way back to either Nephite or Jaredite times. So you could say, well, he's talking about the Jaredites, and yeah, sure. I don't know. Is there such a thing as Book of Mormon Jaredite geography? I don't know these things. I'm new to this, but anyway, this is why I have it on this spreadsheet. A Nephite or a Jaredite. I don't know which because they had both been in this country. I've been in their houses and know it. Okay. This man said, "Sister, calm your sorrows. Whenever that little body is disturbed or uncovered, the Lord will call her up and she will live." Since that time, I've taken great comfort, great cheer, and consolation and satisfaction with praise in my heart and soul until I haven't the words to express it, that it was I that uncovered that little body. Thank you for listening to me. I just can't tell this without crying. Zeke Johnson, son of Joel Hills Johnson. Okay, so take that for what you will. You could dismiss this. Is this really hard, solid evidence? No. Uh, this could just be made up. There's people that make things up, but I'm just going to take note. I like that story. Just going to take note of it. I probably wouldn't use it as an argument for the Heartland model or anything like that. Same with this next one, although this next one may be a little bit more credible. This is Mosiah Lyman Hancock. His father was Levi Hancock, I believe, and he was a president in the 70s at the time of Joseph Smith. So this is the son of a general authority, which, they can misremember things, they can embellish, whatever, they can make stuff up, but I'm going to take this into consideration as well. For this one, we will also go to the primary source. You can find this in the church history catalog, Mosiah L. Hancock autobiography, and I downloaded the PDF for it. This is somebody that had frequent contact with Joseph Smith. He had like a personal relationship with him. They were friends, acquaintances. Okay, so this is toward the end of Joseph Smith's life. It seems shortly before he was martyred. This may be one of the last prophecies that he told anybody, for all I know. That's the way that it reads. Okay, the next day, the prophet came to our home and stopped in our carpenter shop and stood by the turning lathe. I went and got my map for him. Now, he said, I will show you the travels of this people. He then showed our travels through Iowa and said, here you will make a place for the winter, and here you will travel west until you come to the valley of the Great Salt Lake. You will build cities to the north, and to the south, and to the east, and to the west, and you will become a great and wealthy people in that land. But the United States will not receive you with the laws which God desires you to live, and you will have to go where the Nephites lost their power. So, the way that I read this, it seems like he's referring to the Salt Lake Valley. That's where the Nephites lost their power, according to this. Again, could be misremembered, could be made up, could be embellished. Don't know. I have no way to verify this, and I haven't heard any other general authority or someone in authority validate this, but I'm not just going to throw it away. There's a lot of good stuff in this autobiography. I'm still combing through it. But I mean, you just have to take it with a grain of salt. But I feel like this is pretty. I feel like this is pretty credible myself. But okay, so we have that, and then here's the last one that I have for this video. It's going to take me time. I know that there's lots of other stuff out there. Feel free to send it to me. Send it to my email. I'll get to it as soon as I can. Just make sure to clearly label it in the subject line. That'd probably be the best thing. Okay, so this is the last one for this video. And this has to do with Adam again. This is what Joseph Smith said. We're going to go to Joseph Smith papers. Here's the original document right here. This is Journal, March through September 1838. So this was like the far west and Adam period of church history, just before being expelled from Missouri. So this is the 19th of May, 1838. And all you need to do is just read this part. You can see here they're talking about Adam. Grand River is the river that borders the south side of the valley. Okay, so they're in Adam. And then it says, we next kept up the river, mostly in the timber, for 10 miles until we came to Colonel Lyman White's, who lives at the foot of Tower Hill. So we just talked about Tower Hill a little while ago. The two main areas are Tower Hill and Spring Hill. Tower Hill was named after the altar that was found there because it looked kind of like a tower. There were stones, piled up like a tower. Okay, so Lyman White, who lives at the foot of Tower Hill, a name appropriated by President Smith in consequence of the remains of an old Nephitish altar, a tower. Okay, so that's what I have. I'm going to try and find more. I don't know, my channel is mostly a Second Coming channel, so these videos might be a little bit more sparse because I want to focus on what I'm mostly interested in and what most of you are interested in. But I'd appreciate feedback and let me know if you'd like me to continue with this exercise and go as far as I can. I mean, who knows? but this is my newest spreadsheet. Quotes, Book of Mormon geography. Okay, that's going to be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.